Hello, and a very warm welcome to everyone. My name is Sofia, and I am one of the executive directors of the Excellerator 2023 initiative at Global Biotech Revolution. First of all, let me tell you a bit about Global Biotech Revolution. We are a youth-led, non-profit organization, and our mission is powerful yet straightforward to inspire and cultivate the future leaders who will drive the healthcare and biotech fields to new heights. We want to be the wind beneath the wings of progress in this dynamic ecosystem. But here's the thing. When we looked closely at what's holding back aspiring leaders in biotech and healthcare, we found that's not the lack of knowledge or the shortage of technological skills. It's actually leadership, the ability to rise to the occasion, to think critically, and to make transformational changes. That's why this year we've kicked off an exciting new initiative, the Excellerator. The Excellerator is crafted meticulously to bridge this very gap. We're bringing together 100 extraordinary participants from STEM fields, arming them with the skills, the mindset, and the resources they need to shape the healthcare and biotech landscape. The Excellerator Forum will be hosted from September 18th to 20th at Cambridge University. And to give you a glimpse into the caliber of knowledge and expertise you can expect, we recently had the chance to sit down for an insightful conversation with Professor Robert Langer. For those of you who might not know him, Professor Langer is a living legend. He is an inventor, a revered professor at MIT, and one of the most cited scientists ever. He specialized in groundbreaking areas like drug delivery and tissue engineering. He is at the helm of the world's largest biomedical engineering lab and holds over 1,400 patents, granted or pending. But that's not all. He's also co-founded more than 40 biotech companies, including a little company you might have heard of, Moderna. So, whether you're an inspired leader, a curious student, or an early career professional, we hope you all enjoyed the interview he gave to Global Biotech Revolution for the Excellerator 2023 initiative. As the leader of one of the largest biomedical engineering labs in the world, you have experience recruiting and managing a diverse team of over 100 researchers. So when you're selecting the candidates to join your team, what are some of the key qualities and skills that you look for?
Yeah, well, there's a few qualities. One is I really want people to be, well, let me maybe try to put it this way. It's far more important to me that the person is great than they have domain expertise, so to speak. So, a lot of times people, we're doing things in a particular area like materials or biology or chemistry, but I would rather have somebody who is just a superstar at whatever they've done than somebody who just who's just good or maybe better than average in a particular specialty. So that's the first thing. To somebody who's great, what makes them great? I mean, sometimes you learn that from recommendations. Like their advisor says, this is by far the best person we've ever had, and also maybe they're super hardworking, they're creative, imaginative. That's one set of things. Second set of things is, and maybe this will sound simple, but being a nice person and getting along with others, being a team player. I think those two things. I also guess, as a scientist, people who are careful, who go out of their way to make things reproducible. So all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think I completely agree that you need to have a balance between like technical expertise, but also the soft skills, like people that are able to communicate properly and be a team player, as you were mentioning. So yeah, like finding that balance between technical expertise, but also people that have those soft skills, I think it's important. And that's also why we're developing the Accelerator to also give those soft skills to the people that have really strong academic technical background.
And also being nice. I mean, in other words, one of the things is somebody's disruptive, even if they're great, that's usually not so good because it can be very disruptive to everybody, including me. So, it's because you want to spend your time on creative things that are going to, make a difference in the world, not on, getting somebody to get along with somebody else, because hopefully they'll be able to do that anyhow.
Yeah, I agree that having people around you that you actually have fun while you're working, it makes a huge difference when working in a team. Yeah. So you've also mentioned in the past the importance of having a diverse team in science. So could you share some specific examples of how diverse range of backgrounds and perspective can enhance the scientific process and lead to more like innovative solutions in biotech?
Yeah, well, let me give you an example, and actually we'll also go over the other thing that I I was saying about people. So I've had person. I remember, about 15 years ago. This is just one of a number of examples. Gio Traverso, he was actually a molecular biologist and a gastroenterologist. He got his PhD with Bert Vogelstein at Johns Hopkins, which is Bert's one of the top molecular biologists in the world. And Gio was, doing gastroenterology and biochemistry, but he read what I was doing. He said, "Gee, I'd like to come, do our fellowship in your lab." And that he was terrific. I mean, he, didn't have that background in what we were doing, but he had a different background. So we were able to, because of him, and he led a lot of these efforts, make pills that could last for up to a month that you'd swallow. Make pills that could deliver large molecules like insulin. Pills that could monitor, your what you're doing. And really, in a way, I feel like he's revolutionizing oral drug delivery. So, and actually, it's kind of interesting, even though he was an assistant professor later at Harvard Medical School in gastroenterology, which is his specialty, the mechanical engineering department at MIT, which is the number one department in the world in mechanical engineering, had an opening, and they actually said, well, they had 400 applicants, and they picked him.
Yeah.
So I think, and also because he had this diverse background, we were able to have people who had material science backgrounds, biochemistry backgrounds, clinical backgrounds, chemical engineering backgrounds, mechanical engineering backgrounds, all working together to come up with all kinds of new medicines. A lot of it was done with Gates Foundation, also with Novo Nordisk. So I mean, but that's a great example. I have quite a few others too, but I think there are a lot of people, because of this diversity, were able to help us do
Mhm.
things that we might not have been able to do otherwise.
Yeah, that's a really nice story. So how do you think we can actually foster more diverse and inclusive scientific community, and how can young leaders in the biotech sector contribute to this?
Well, I think in the long run, and there are certain places, including the institute that I'm in, I think do foster it. I mean, classically, I think if you look at it, I'm not sure how it is in England, but I assume it's the same. Classically, if you look at most universities, right, they have a building for English, they have a building for math, a building for chemistry,
Hmm.
and so forth. One of the things that our building does, and Stanford, I think, and I think Emory and Georgia Tech have a building that is multidisciplinary. So the building that I'm in has biologists, has clinicians, and 7 different types of engineers. And
Wow.
and also because of that, there are also all the different kinds of students and postdocs. And I think those are the people of the future, right? They're like yourself. And I think that they get exposed to different things and they can see what works and what doesn't work. They also make collaborations and friendships that could last for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I think those kind of places like this broad institutes that have different people are like really amazing places where like just like ideas come up, just like on lunch breaks and this kind of moments. They just having those kind of people together, it's great. So you've always advised people to pursue big and bold work rather than incremental progress. So this type of work often involves like taking risks and thinking outside the box. How do you think we can cultivate a culture that encourages this risk taking and innovation in scientific research?
Well, I think that's a really good question. I think people have to sort of realize that failure is okay. Almost everybody fails. Well, certainly I have. Certainly, I mean, Steve Jobs failed. Lots of people failed. Failure, and I think you have to realize that failure is okay. I think that if some cultures, I think people feel like if they fail, that's the end of it. And really, I think it's important that people feel comfortable taking chances. And I think grants that encourage people taking chances, that give funding for that. I think funding high risk, high reward projects are important. But part of it, I think having lectures and one thing is always useful for role models. For me, I had when I was a postdoc, Judah Folkman, who was a surgeon, was my mentor, and he he got a lot of criticism. He had this idea that if you could stop blood vessels, you could stop cancer, and a lot of people didn't agree with that. But he kept pushing and pushing, and eventually it was proven right. But I know for me, seeing his example meant a lot to me when I tried to do things, and I hope my students um, feel that way too. They watch me, certainly when I talk about all of the struggles that I had early on in my career. I hope that that people realize that can be very common, and it's probably worth it.
Yeah. So you mentioned about failure, and actually you've been quite open in the past about the challenges and failures that you have faced in your career, such as having your first 9 grants rejected, I think. So for young scientists who might be experiencing this kind of like crisis or setback, what advice would you give them to kind of persevere and continue to pursue their goals?
Yeah, well, I think just what you said, keep trying. I mean, just because, it doesn't matter how many grants you get turned down, it matters how many you get. I think that's
Yeah.
important to realize, so, and I mean, I remember at the end of my first year, I was walking down the hall with a guy who also started at MIT at the same time I did, and I just said, "Yeah, I got 9 grants in a row turned down when I started." And he said, "But and I finally just got one, which was not a big grant. It was like 30,000. That was the 10th grant." So, and he said, "Geez," he says, "I don't even know how you can live with yourself." He said, "I just wrote one grant and it got rejected, and it just made me feel so miserable." But I thought to myself, it didn't matter that. I mean, what really mattered was I got the one grant. I mean, and I was able to do something with it. And I think that that's that's kind of how I started thinking about it. So I've written a lot
Yes.
of grants.
So do you think failure can be used like as a learning experience and a catalyst for actually like growth and resilience and cultivating that?
Well, to an extent. I mean, I a lot of times when I got rejected with the grants, I don't agree with what people said, and I was pretty disappointed and I was discouraged. But sure, I think people. I've always thought that people who are successful are ones that know how to deal with failure well. It's easy to deal with success; anybody can do that. But if you
Yeah.
let failure beat you, that's not so good.
Yes, absolutely true. That the biotech industry has suffered a lot of rapid changes recently because of the development of some like new technologies like the use of AI or genetic engineering. So, what are some of the strategies or practices that young scientists, young leaders can adopt to thrive in such a fast-paced environment that's constantly changing and there is always new discoveries? How can you, keep up with all what is happening and kind of adapt and
I
keep
see.
innovating?
Yeah. Well, I think most of these things are a team effort. There's different people who have different skills who are expert. Like there's some people who are experts in AI, some in biochemistry, some in chemistry, some in physiology, on and on and on. So I think some of it is by talking to colleagues, some of it's by reading. Um, so I think that in my case, I mean, I review grants, I read papers. My students, we have lots of seminars. But I mean, I think it's just by reading and listening and talking.
Hmm. Yeah. And how do you think we can balance this like speed and agility with also the importance of like methodical and reliable research that you mentioned earlier about like having reproducible research? How important is that? But we also want, to create new technologies and keep innovating.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important. I think that you've got to get the fundamentals right first. You have to have good data. I mean, just to give an example, AI, in my opinion, means nothing without really good data. I mean, you can't analyze something unless the data is really good. And in the case
Hmm.
of AI, and probably if there's a lot of it. And I think that's going to be true across the board. I mean, that almost seems like the first step is to make sure you get the fundamentals right.
Yeah, absolutely. So besides having one of the most prolific academic labs in the world, you have also co-founded over 40 companies. So why do you think it's important to commercialize science and to drive private funding to develop new technologies?
Well, I think it's important because I want to see the things that science does that can be good get out to the world and help people. I mean, it's not. it's not about making money. I mean, I mean, it's not about commercializing things per se, but how do you get discoveries that hopefully can have a big impact on the world out to the world? It's not an easy thing. And so if you don't have patents, if you don't have companies, almost always it doesn't happen, no matter what
Hmm.
people like to think. I mean, there may be a few rare exceptions, but for the most part, it doesn't happen unless people, again, probably like yourself and your colleagues or me, decide that we're going to do it. And then you create a company or whatever, and or some entity, and you work hard to get it out to the world. It's not easy.
Hmm. And what do you think are some of the main challenges to actually take, the science that we build in the lab and we work on to actually, have an impact in human lives?
Well, I think that starts with making a discovery. It also, you need a good team. I mean, a really good team. You need, I think, a lot of funding. You need good advice. I mean, and you have to work really hard. I mean, it's a long road. I mean, especially in biotech and medicine.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think one of the, in my opinion, like also one core thing is also to have collaborations and kind of collaborate with different people. And actually, as academic researchers, you've also collaborated with different institutions such as corporations like Novo Nordisk or nonprofit organizations such as the Gates Foundation. So, in your experience, what is the role that these partnerships and collaborations play in driving breakthroughs and advancing scientific industry?
Yeah, well, those places play a great role. I mean, I think in the case of the Gates Foundation, I think they have a really powerful vision. They understand the problems in the developing world. They have very, very smart people, and they give us great advice. They give us funding as well. They've gone out of their way to try to make things happen when we do it. Bill included. I mean, does they're very, very active, and I've been very impressed with them. And Nova Nordisk, kind of the same thing, except they also can do other things like manufacturing and so forth, and which has been great. I mean, they've been a tremendous help and a great partner.
That's great. So the biotech industry has seen tremendous growth and innovation in the recent years with the development of powerful technologies, as we were mentioning, such as genetic engineer or AI. In your view, what role do you see leaders from STEM backgrounds playing in driving the responsible development and deployment of these technologies? And how can they work alongside policymakers, executives, entrepreneurs, journalists to shape the future of the industry?
Well, I think it's because they have that kind of background. I mean, they have to develop good judgment, and it really depends which of the specific things you mentioned. But there are and there's different kinds of programs. Like in the United States, I think the American Academy of the AAAS, they have a program, about like presidential fellows or people who can science fellows who learn about science, but also about science policy. I think, um, but so there could be programs, but a lot of it's just learning by doing. For me,
Hmm.
or I learned some things academically. I learned some things by advising the government. And at one point they asked me to actually chair the FDA science board. That was or still is their highest advisory board. And I think you just learn. I mean, it's not like I know or anybody knows everything. You just keep learning as you do, and hopefully, as you do more, you get better judgment and you can help people.
Yeah, definitely. So you have mentioned in the past that most of your fellow chemical engineering graduates went to work for like high-paying jobs in other companies, but you decided to turn those jobs down and actually try to make an impact in human lives. So you have been a pioneer in the biotech industry, developing technologies that have had tremendous impact in human health, such as, for example, the COVID vaccines developed by Moderna. So, in your view, what is the moral responsibility that science and entrepreneurs have using their skills and knowledge to create positive change in the world? And how can we ensure that this progress is aligned with the needs and values of the society as a whole?
Well, I mean, there, I think you just have to try to teach people, and you have to try to teach people good values. You have to have good role models. Um, and you want people to do good things because they want to. I don't know that there's any easy answers to that, but I think you just want you want with courses, in addition to science, I think you hopefully give examples like you mentioned about, that you can do a lot of good. I know that people in my lab, I mean, they're very, very excited about doing things that help the developing world, where the Gates Foundation comes and I think it gives them a feeling that they're doing something really worthwhile. And I think it's embedding in people the fact that if you do good things, and maybe I'm being oversimplistic, but if you do good things, I think it makes you happier and it makes the world a better place.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. It's really rewarding to work on this field and to see actually that some of the technologies that we develop as scientists have an actual impact in the society. So, what are you most excited about when you think about the future of the biotech ecosystem?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I mean, one is, I mean, I love just seeing more and more things get out there that can help people. I mean, the COVID vaccines are a tremendous example, but I also think we're going to see a lot more. I mean, personalized cancer vaccines, new cell therapies. I think all those things. But the great thing about science is really, especially basic science and engineering, is curiosity driven research. And you don't know what people are going to discover. People will keep, I think, all over the world, and do, I hope, really good science and right now those discoveries don't have a name because they haven't been invented yet, and the hope is that that those discoveries will change the world. I mean, CRISPR is a great example. If you asked anybody 12 years ago what it was, I don't think hardly anybody would know.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, the things that we can't imagine actually what is most exciting. Yeah, I agree with that. And how do you think young leaders can do to prepare for this future that we actually don't know? Like it's uncertain what's coming.
Well, I think you just want to learn the fundamentals. You want to be put, of science, chemistry, biology, physics, engineering. You want to, and I think you want to be put in environments that expose you to different scientific issues and other things that make you grow as a person and as a scientist.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great way to end it. So that those are were all my questions. Um, so yeah, it's thank you so much for replying to all the questions and for taking the time.
Well, no, thank you. Those are great questions. You did a terrific job.
Thank you.